Welcome everyone to another AHA tutorial. I'm really excited about our topic this go round because I get to show you updates that we made to one of the most popular pages in all of AHA, which is the Gantt chart, what you're looking at on your screen right now actually. And this Gantt chart is a little bit special. It's actually the internal AHA release that one of our product managers created when we were putting together the launch of the newly updated Gantt chart earlier this year. That's a little bit meta, but I figured this crowd, you might like to see how we use our own tool internally. So if you've ever used a Gantt chart, this is what one looks like. You know that these are excellent tools for visualizing cross-functional work and dependencies. If your team has ambitious strategic goals that require complex work to achieve, this is often how that work gets done. This is where you live day to day as you manage those projects. So we're going to spend about half an hour together going through how to plan releases in the new Gantt chart. And I'm going to divide this up into 3 sections, each starting with the same letter to help us remember that. So today we'll talk about timing, tracking, and templates. Timing, tracking, templates. So first we'll talk about how to visualize timing and dependencies on your Gantt chart. Then we'll look at how to track progress across your whole release as it happens in real time and how you can share that with stakeholders. And then finally, we'll create a release template for ourselves. So once you've done this yourself successfully a couple of times, it's always nice to repeat those successes. That's where release templates come in, and we'll wrap up with that. One more thing you'll hear from me every so often is that I will call out something as new. If you're new to AHA or new to Gantt charts in general, then everything's going to look new, and that's great. I hope you have a wonderful time. But if you've been using AHA Gantt charts for a few years, I have some things I don't want you to miss. We just updated Gantt charts significantly in early 2020. So if I call out something as new, that's just something that I'm really excited about. Okay, so let's get going. Let's jump over here to the features board. And let me orient you to where we are. First of all, what you're looking at. So each of these columns are releases, which we think of as containers for work. And each card you see is a different feature, though I could adjust this to look at master features as well. And a feature is a fundamental unit of work. All together, they make up a release, kind of that value you want to deliver to your customer. We're in a workspace called Fredwin Cycling right now. This is a demo workspace, which you actually have access to. This is a product workspace. So I'm going to be using the terminology of product managers, like features and releases instead of activities or schedules. And you actually have access to more than one type of demo workspace. We have a total of 6 different demo workspaces because earlier in 2020, we released a total of 6 different workspace types into AHA. So if you have a business, project, marketing, services, IT, or product team, you can have a workspace with terminology and function kind of dialed in for that exact role. And you can enable any one of these workspaces if you want a sandbox environment to kind of play around, or if you want to see how those workspaces could be structured for your own team. Okay, and I'm going to use data that you have access to as well, and we'll build our release together right here in Fredwin Cycling. And this button right here is where a lot of releases are born. I click the Add Release button. I'll give it a name, and I'll pick a release date. We'll push it out a little bit here. And then I'll click a release phase template. So remember, we're talking timing, tracking, and templates. Templates we'll talk about at the end. I'll just start with the default here, but we will by the end of this make our own custom template. I'll create the release, and you'll notice a new swim lane appears right there. There's our partner portal release. Now we need to add features to it, right? I have a container for work. I need to add the work to it. I'm going to use what's called a parking lot in AHA. You might also call this a backlog. A lot of these features might come from ideas your team has internally, stuff that's already on your roadmap, or they might come from your ideas portal. So if you have a public portal that all of your users and customers and even internal team members can submit ideas to, you can promote the best ideas there into actual work that your team wants to commit to. Put it in a parking lot and you can groom it. That's a whole nother tutorial topic. And then once it's groomed, it's easy to add things that apply to this container of work right to the release. I'll add a couple here. Local bike shops are partner portals, sponsored accomplishments. That sounds great. Ratings for partners. Perfect. I've got a neat little release here. Your release might be much larger, but again, we're just working with a little demo data. We've got features in our release. Let's click in and show you the release details page. And this is what that looks like. This is an at-a-glance view of your release, how it's structured, when you can plan on it being completed. A lot of these fields are available to edit, so I can edit my release date here. I can edit the name if I want to without opening another screen. This is kind of interesting if you aren't familiar with internal and external release dates. The idea here is that internally your team might have the goal of June 5th as your release date. But you might not want to communicate that or commit to that publicly, externally, depending on your audience. External stakeholders or maybe an executive team. You can have a different release date externally than you do internally, and kind of make this something you're more comfortable with. Make it that in June you're going to be releasing this, or in a certain quarter or half a year, which is great for the optics of your team. Okay, over here on the right hand side, you can see the release phases, and this is the at a glance view of how your release is going to progress from phase to milestone. You'll notice there's two different types of phases here. These square icons denote a release phase. So a phase is an optional data element in AHA. You might choose to use these or not. And it has a start and an end date. It's a great way, especially on a larger, more complex release, or if you're following the same release template time and time again. These were all populated by that template I selected. It's a nice way to see the flow of your release. So obviously it's pretty common to have a development phase after a lot of strategic review and ideas, prioritization, that sort of thing. Those are the square ones, release phases. The other type is the circle, and that is a release milestone. So milestones are specific threshold dates after which and before which really important things happen. In this case, we can see right away that development really can't start until the product team has reviewed all the work that's part of the release. So that's a milestone date. And we'll show you in a little bit how to create dependencies between phases and milestones, so you can tell if something slips, the effect it will have on the rest of your release, because these are all interconnected. Okay, a couple more things. I've got my total features here. 3 of them. I could click in there and see the list that you just saw me add. I've got the days to release, and then I've got a couple of ways to have discussions at this really high level, at the release level. I could add to-dos here or comments and start a discussion. These are important if my release applies to other cross-functional teams. Maybe a marketing team needs to weigh in to my product release here. I could assign a to-do to have someone review the release as it's set right now. Or I could assign to-dos, as you probably know, at much more granular levels, at the phase level, at the feature level, wherever you want to have that conversation. Next thing here is watchers. So a watcher on a release is someone who you want to be notified about all the updates to that release. I'm a watcher right now because I created it. So any change to phases, features, anything like that, dates, I get an email. I'll get an email and a notification. I'll also get a digest email at the top of every hour. Anybody I add as a watcher can adjust that in their own personal settings, but by default, you'll get emails and notifications from AHA as things happen, and then in a digest. Let's add a couple more here. At this level, I'm looking kind of on a high strategic level. So Brian DeHoff, he sounds pretty strategic. I'll add him. And let's add Melissa Hopkins as well. So she's in charge of AHA's customer success team. Customer success managers are definitely going to work with partners in Fredwin Cycling here. She should be kept abreast of everything that's changing with the release. Add them right at the top, and then I know that they're in the loop. Last thing to add here is this, links to goals and initiatives, links to my strategy. So important part of AHA, even though there's a very human urge to just keep busy and feel important and get to work right away, is that you can link your work to your strategic goals. In fact, anybody who works on your release or on any of these features should know why they're doing what they're doing, how that contributes to the success of Fredwin Cycling. We call this the red thread of strategy, and this is one of the ways to do it. Click into my available goals. You can see we've got a goal to have the largest partner ecosystem. This definitely contributes to that. Initiatives as well. I can see all my initiatives across all the workspaces. I'm going to launch the partner portal. So this will be our first release focused on that partner portal. And now at this level, the people doing the work know why the work matters. And also if I was reporting on or presenting or just watching those goals or initiatives, I'd see what work we have planned that contributes to the goal or the initiative. I think we're ready to look at the Gantt chart and start talking about timing. Let me adjust those dates there so you can catch up with me. And this is a Gantt chart, and right away, this is new, but a little bit minor. We have updated the aesthetics of the Gantt chart a lot. Lines are crisper and cleaner. We've made the colors a little easier on the eyes. The idea here is to make it easier for you to focus on the flow of your release. So you can see that flow right here as those same phases. Now they're rectangles because they've got a date range, and those same milestones, still circles, you can see that flow, right? This is how timing is going to progress in the release, all working towards the release date, this diamond right up here. And you can see we have a couple outliers, and these are those features that we added, and they're odd. They're just hanging out. This could be legitimate. Again, phases are optional, but these are all features I'll want my engineers to work on. So I'm going to click and add these directly to the development release phase. And this is new. You can now click and drag a feature directly into a phase, and it becomes something that I can expand, this little caret over here. You can see how it changes a little bit right here as far as how it looks with these little endpoints. We want you to be able to adjust your Gantt flow right from this view, so you never have to leave this page to add something to a phase. And this is also new. You'll notice that the features don't align with the phase. Previously, they had to. And as we thought more about that, I'm actually really excited about this. There's more than one way to resolve this scenario, right? Where a feature doesn't align with the phase. One way to resolve it could be to talk to the engineer and reschedule the feature so that it starts during the development phase, because that's when things need to happen. And I should find the actual dates of that phase on May 29th, it looks like. So I could click in here and have this start on the 29th instead of the 20th. It'll push out that due date and at least align the start date here. Another way to resolve this situation could be to expand the phase and say, this record can't move. We haven't thought holistically enough about how long development is going to take, so let's expand the phase. And a third way to do it is to align the phase with the child features, which I'll show you in just a little bit. Let me get these a little bit closer. Another way to adjust dates is just to click and drag here. You can see I can move them as one unit, or I can drag to just get a single start date or a single end date. Okay, you can see I've got some dead air here that I need to fill up with the phase. So I could go over to the More Options menu by the phase and click Align with Visible Features. And now I've decided that my features are well planned and I want to shift my phase to align with that. 3 different ways to look at things depending on how you're building out your Gantt chart. We want to make it really intuitive on this view to align your work with the timing of your release. One other thing I want to show you here with features, and that is that previously, ever since Gantt charts have been invented, they need dates on items to visualize those items. This is a date-based report. However, and this is very new, you no longer have to have that here in the AHA Gantt chart. You can see that this features borders just got all sorts of fuzzy to indicate that it doesn't have a start or an end date, but it's still displaying on the Gantt chart. And once again, there are a couple different ways to resolve this depending on how you want to think about the timing of your release. One of them could be maybe as a product manager, I'm throwing features into my release from the features board, and then I'm pulling up the Gantt view, and here's where I want to resolve them and say, drag one of these and give it a start date, just like we did earlier, but I don't know the end date yet. Or drag it around completely and give it dates. You can see on the back end, I have dates there again. Another way to think about this could be that maybe this is a feature that's important, maybe just for the health of my product. Maybe it's some sort of maintenance task that happens every week, but doesn't need dates around it. And maybe it's not something I need to display on my Gantt chart as I'm thinking about the timing of our entire release. So you have the option over here in the More Options menu of the feature to remove it from the Gantt. And now it's gone. Now, important point of clarification, I removed it from the Gantt chart view. I didn't remove it from the release, so it can still be assigned to an engineer. The work will still be done. It just doesn't contribute to my flow here, so I've hidden it. And I can always bring it back if that's an error, or if I want to just see everything that's going on here. I'm going to give it dates again just because fuzzy bars make me nervous. Other things to show you here, this is kind of fun, isn't it? Is that I can add records directly from the Gantt view. You always could, but the way you do it is new here as well. You can see these blue plus marks. From any phase, I can click the plus there and add a new feature or show a hidden feature. Also between phases, I can click and add new features, show an existing feature, or add a new milestone or a new phase. We have a development phase here, for example, but we don't yet have a QA test phase. That probably comes after. Oh, here, let me collapse it so I can add another phase here. Something for our QA testers. That's probably pretty important before we get to a launch, right? Maybe these can happen kind of concurrently as the QA team gets started as soon as there's some development there. So I can just add and adjust items right from there. And I think you've seen as I've been clicking around here that just dragging our items around at any level will adjust the dates on the back end there. You've seen as I've been clicking around, just dragging elements at all levels around here will adjust their dates on the back end there. Okay, we're looking at timing and it's looking pretty good. I've got a basic flow here, but those of you who have worked with Gantt charts before can see trouble on the horizon, and let me highlight that for you by using dependencies. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but the product team review should definitely happen before development as a phase has started. So I can click here and drag to create a dependency between items, and you'll notice that the line shows up red, and that's not good, but it's really useful, especially because we haven't started on this release yet as a team, and I'm able to, as a product manager, see that there's trouble with my timing right here before we even get to it. And I can maybe get that addressed. Again, there are different ways to resolve this. I could talk to the product team and say, you know, guys, we really have to get that review done sooner. And here you can see that the dependencies color changes as I push it earlier. Or if that date can't move or can't move much, I can talk to the engineering team and say, look, we've got to push out development because product is not going to be ready yet. Those are really healthy conversations to have right now before you get to the end of May and you're already in the thick of it. You'll also notice that if I can create dependencies between a lot of different items and things start to shift, we don't push the release date out. Because again, there's a couple different ways to resolve it, but you can see that it starts to affect the release date. It either means that I really need to talk to my team about their ability to be more efficient, or we really haven't thought through what this is going to cost us as far as when we can release this. And just like there is at the phase level, also at the release level, I can align my release with visible children just like that. Okay, one more thing to show you on timing that is very new, and I'm really excited about this. Right now, we've been looking at the Gantt view organized around a release and its features, all organized around this diamond right here, my release date. Another way to think about your work is with master features, and now we have this toggle up here to show master features on your Gantt view. Master features, you might also call these master activities or epics, where releases are containers for work, looking at work around a release date. Master features organize your work by theme. So let me click over here. Still a Gantt chart, should look similar, but you can see that now I have features in my master features that are spread across releases. For example, partner clubs here, this master feature might be something I'm working on all through the spring, and we're just going to chip away at it. You can see that this feature here shipped with the partner security release. I also have these features that are going to ship or did ship with the iOS version 4.23 release. This is just a different way to look at your work. In fact, if you want to ignore releases altogether, I can hide those by clicking this toggle. And then just think about my work in terms of theme, and am I making enough progress on the master feature level of my features? And then that informs my decisions at my date-based view back on releases. So this is very new, the ability to show master features and features on the Gantt chart. Everything here works just the same as you saw before. We've got features, we've got dependencies, same sort of functionality. Okay, let's head back to our release here. We've talked about timing a lot, and I think we've got a fairly good flow there. So let's move on to talk about tracking. Remember, we're talking about timing, tracking, and templates, and part 2 here is tracking the progress of your work as it happens. So if you have progress enabled in your account, that's an account level setting. By default, it will show on your release here in the Gantt view. I hid it from you because I want to be able to click this and show you that. By default, you'll see the progress of your work as it happens. Once I've clicked this, you can see that these bars all became much more lightly colored, meaning no work has been completed yet. But down here at the feature level, I've got a feature that has some completion on it. You can see the dark bar here and the lighter bar there. At every level, feature, phase, all the way up here at release, I can have a different way to calculate progress. So right here on the feature level, I've entered it manually. I got you 78% there. But I could calculate it based on an estimate that I enter or my engineering team enters, or the number of requirements or to-dos completed. Up here on the phase level, I can calculate progress by to-dos completed, by features completed. I can enter it manually, but I can also calculate from the total completion percentage from features. And if I click that, you can see it updates. So having a couple of those features in progress means that this phase is now 55% completed. And this is really useful, especially if I have a lot of phases and if they're all collapsed. At a glance, I can see how we're progressing in a given phase. up on the release level too. Same sort of thing. I can calculate this from features completed or phases or to-dos, actually a lot of things here, including estimates. I can enter it manually, even calculate it from master features, but I'm going to click features. And as you see, because we have a couple features in progress, that makes one phase in progress, which means my release is off and kicking. I've got 55% there based on features. Or if I did it from phases, you can see I've got 7% of the phases completed over my whole release. Another fun thing with phases is that I can have a completion check mark that's kind of fun. I'll jump this feature here into a phase, and I'll change the status to shipped. I'm also going to add a progress field and manually enter the progress as 100%, totally complete. Now that it's completed and the phase is going to be calculated from that, you'll see a little check mark there, both on the feature because the feature itself was completed, and if the phase was collapsed, you'd see that at the phase level as well on both levels. If you're looking straight down the left column of your release and you start seeing check marks as phases are completed, that's a good thing. Ideally, I'd want to see these completed in order as we're looking through the timing of our release, but anytime you see that green check mark, it's really useful to see that something's been shipped or someone's completed their part of my cross-functional plan here. Okay, two more things to show you with progress tracking here. One is that I can color bars by status up here in the Customize View drop down. I'll click color bars by status. So releases and features have workflows associated with them, which means they can go from not started to in progress to complete. And you can select, when you create your workflow, you can customize the colors that are associated with different statuses. So in this case, in AHA, we standardize the colors across all of our teams in the marketing department. So you can get used to knowing that this shade of kind of grayish blue-ish means that something's not started yet. It's under consideration or not started, or whatever that progress equivalent is. And this green, of course, means that something's been completed. So as you're, again, looking at the feature or the release, it starts to change through its statuses. You'll see those colors change as well. So if I was looking at multiple releases at once and I'd see the color change, I'd know what that meant as far as completion and be able to track that just at a glance. Again, really important for how color communicates at a glance. Phases here don't have workflows associated with them. They're just ways to organize their features. They're optional. So there's no need to really have a workflow status associated with them. What we've done at AHA is to change the color of the phases, which you can customize right here, to represent different types of work. And if there was, for example, a design phase here and I was on the design team, then I know that this was my color and I jump right in for my features or requirements or what have you, or for a phase level view. This is a really easy way to orient people to the specific part of the major cross-functional plan that they're responsible for, and so they can get to work and also see where they slot in as far as the timing of the overall flow. Okay, one last thing to show you, and that is, remember we added watchers at the release level. That's a really granular way to give someone notifications about progress. They'll get an email if something happens. They'll get digest emails at the top of the hour, depending, of course, how they've configured the notifications. But what if you just want an overview? What if this is a great Gantt chart and really useful for presenting to your stakeholders? In that case, you can save this view by clicking the Save View button, just like you can with any AHA report or roadmap, and share it either with internal workspaces or with parent lines or with every workspace under a parent line. And I can also create specific folders to share it in, maybe organized around a project or a particular type of report. And finally, I can adjust the permissions. So maybe this is something I want to share and not allow people to edit, just my plan for me. Or maybe this is a really collaborative effort and I want people to be able to edit it. Once that's saved, actually, let me give it a name. You could come up with something snazzier than that, but I'm under pressure. I'll click Save View. And once that's saved, you'll see the title update. The URL up here becomes unique. You can share that URL. And I can click this menu right here. This is a share menu. You'll see this on a lot of different pages throughout AHA. It's always worth clicking on. There's always fun ways to share your work. And you can see that this lets me share my Gantt chart as a static image, either in PNG or PDF, share it as a web page if I have that enabled. And that means I can put security parameters around the web page so that people outside my AHA account can access this Gantt view, but not access the rest of my account. That's very useful. or I can add it to a presentation, which is really fun. If the partner portal is something I'm updating regularly, and remember we have all sorts of master features associated with this, say it's once a month or once a quarter, then I might add this to the standard Fredwood product update or product review as a slide. And once it's in there as a slide, I have a couple of really neat options. I can adjust the update frequency of the Gantt view, so I can put it in there as a static image if I just want to show people where we sit and how we're progressing. I can also have this be a manual trigger. So once I click refresh, maybe just before I speak in a meeting, it'll refresh with the latest data, and I can tell people that I have up to the moment accuracy. Or I can just have this Gantt view update constantly in the presentation slide. So as my engineers in the background are completing features, those little progress bars start clicking forward, which is just a really great narrative to present as you're talking to stakeholders, maybe an executive team or maybe other cross-functional teams who depend on this release for their own releases. We can talk about how we're progressing. AHA presentations are pretty fun. In AHA, we have these things that are living documents. We want you to be able to always click into something and see details, which actually you can already do on the Gantt view. We've been doing this during the whole tutorial. And we don't want you to ever have to export something unless you really do need a static image. We want you always to be able to click back and link back to the actual item. Okay, that's timing taken care of. That's tracking taken care of. Let's talk about templates. And let's say that this has been a really successful partner portal release. Let's say it's my 5th partner portal release. And by now I'm comfortable with my team. I'm comfortable with things that might crop up. We had a little bit of trouble there with the product team review. And so I can anticipate some of these risks and mitigate them. It's time to start building the template. So to do that, I'm going to jump over to another tab, to my workspace settings. Click on the gear icon here. Click on workspace. If you're a workspace owner in your account, you'll see this option. Then I'll click on release phases and milestones. You can see that I have a couple different templates built already here for a couple different types of releases. And this is important. You don't release, depending on your product, you don't release the same way every time. For example, if I'm updating a mobile app, maybe the Apple Store needs to approve my updates before it can go live. That's a milestone that's unique to that release. And so I can create different templates for different types of releases. Partner Portals is a web app, so I'll probably use this thing that I built out, web app releases. And see, there's the QA phase that we decided to add in. And as you add in phases or milestones, you can do some fun things. So let's add a design one, a design phase to the front there. I'll call it design. And I can add a description if I need to. I can select whether it's a phase, which remember has a date range, or a milestone, which is that threshold date. I can adjust the number of days I want it to happen after the previous phase if I want some padding around it. I can also put a dependency in there so that the design phase should come after the product strategy and the customer research and probably feature definition as well. I can pre-build those dependencies in there. And then I can select how long I think this phase should take. Maybe it's 5 days, maybe it's only 3 based on the amount of times we've done this before. Also, here is where I can pick that phase color, and you can standardize this across your team with this template so that, say, the design phase is always this particular shade of, what is that, sandalwood kind of, and the design team is always going to look for that color. I'm sure they'll know what color this is exactly. So anyone who creates a web app release using this template will already have included a design phase in the right slot with the right dependencies for the right duration with the right color, and this is neat, this is really new, with the right sort of to-dos. You can always add to-dos to a release phase, but, and this was another go-to-market launch for AHA in early 2020, you can now also add these things called approval to-dos right here. So to-do you're familiar with, it's either complete or it isn't, but the approval to-do has 3 options. I can approve an item, I can reject an item, or I can approve it with minor changes, which means make a couple tweaks, but I don't need to review it again, it's approved. I can add an approval to-do here to this phase. Description, a summary, assign it to multiple people, and go right from there. All right, let me add this template in. We'll see it show up in the right spot. It'll show up down here because I just added it, but really when I create the release from the template, it'll show up in the right order there. Okay, now let's jump back to the Gantt chart and let's add another release. I'm going to collapse this partner portal release. I can add a release button. Remember, we added one before from the features board. I can also add a release right here from the release Gantt view. Same sort of modal that you've seen before. We'll give it a name. I'll give it a release date. Well, move it out a little bit. If I was creating this for real, I might push this out by a month or by 2 weeks, depending on how often you release. Okay, I like being the owner here because I'm the creator. But the main thing I want to show you is this, the release phase template. So last time we used that default template, but now let's use the new and improved web app release template. I'll create it, I will get to work, and it will show up here on my board. You'll notice here, let me expand it for you, that these phases are a little bit expanded because from researching this partner portal release and doing it many times before, I know that the original plan we had was just not enough time. 1 day to prioritize customer ideas, I think is what we had there originally. I can expand the date range here and really see everything from start to finish. There's my timing, my flow, and there's the start of my tracking. You can see those pre-built dependencies there. And really, same sort of thing. This is now my release to customize. I can create more dependencies if I want to, or I can see that a couple have already been created. If I want to remove things, I can remove them. Or if I was showing releases from another workspace or showing multiple releases from my workspace, I can actually create dependencies between releases, even if they're something another team is working on. So this Gantt view can get as sophisticated as you need it to be to make sure that you're visualizing the right sort of information for your plans. Okay, that's it. We've covered a lot here. I realize this is just scratching the surface of Gantt charts and of release planning in general. If you remember, we went over timing, and you can see the flow there and the dependencies and the colors. We went over tracking, so you can see the work in progress and the ability to share that with your stakeholders. And then we built a template together, or modified a template together, I should say, so that as you learn from lessons and become more adept at releasing successfully, you can now drive that through consistently across your workspace. If you want to have any conversations about this, not only about what button does what, but how do I think about accomplishing ambitious goals with Gantt charts, please reach out to our customer success team. They're all product experts. They've all sat in your seat, which is always really helpful having that conversation. And they all love talking about this. So thanks for coming, and please send in your questions. Thanks.